think without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce today's speakers. We have Sol Maria López, and she is the Media Cataloging Coordinator for the University of Colorado Boulder Libraries. And with her, we also have Wright, who is the Serials and E-Resources Cataloging Manager for the University of Colorado. And I think I will go ahead and turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Christine. Again, my name is Sol Maria López, and I'm a Media Cataloging Coordinator at University of Colorado Boulder Libraries. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas, and I've been in Colorado for 2 years.
I'm Wright. I'm the Serials and E-Resources Cataloging Manager here at CU Boulder, and I've been in Colorado for a long time, since 1995.
So I want to welcome everyone. Before we get started, I want to say that we're very happy to be given an opportunity to speak to the larger library community about our topic. Today we will be discussing what is defined as radical cataloging. I will provide background information on a specific subject heading for illegal aliens, or the I word, and the role of the Library of Congress and other national organizations. I will talk about the specifics of our project, which has been implemented at 2 universities in Colorado. And I'll also go over some examples. Then I'll hand it over to my colleague Laura, who will talk about the administrative side of things and will discuss other impacts and implications of inclusive practices done at the local level. Then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. Before we begin, I want to say thanks for letting us know what type of library you work in. To get to know you a little bit better, we have a few more questions for you. So, do you have experience using local subject heading? Is our first question. Oh, interesting. It's a 50%, 50-50, yes and no. That's great. And our second question is, have you or your organization ever discussed using non-Library of Congress or non-peers for public libraries subject heading? Right, so very interesting. Thank you for answering our question. So I wanted to start by sharing one definition for radical cataloging, a term I only learned about after I sought to implement this project. The definition was borrowed from a paper titled Radical Cataloging from Words to Action. Radical cataloging refers to addressing the root systemic or structural issues behind social problems. Radical cataloging in this way is not necessarily an attempt to do away with or subvert cataloging altogether, but it is rather intended to address the root issues that can make access to information problematic. The authors go further by stating that radical cataloging seeks to give a voice to people and concepts that are difficult to access through library subject searches. They then go on by breaking down specific areas of radical cataloging. This here is a timeline on the use of the subject heading illegal aliens, as well as some of the events that have unfolded since. So between 1910 and 1914, aliens appeared in the Library of Congress's first edition of subject headings used in the dictionary catalogs of the Library of Congress. In 1980, aliens, illegal was established. In 1993, it was revised to illegal aliens. In 2010, Race Forward, the Center for Racial Justice Innovation, launched the Drop the I Word campaign, seeking to eliminate the widespread use of the word illegal to refer to immigrants, a term they consider to be inhumane and derogatory. Then in 2013, Melissa Padilla and librarians at Dartmouth College worked together to petition the Library of Congress to change the subject heading. They get all of the credit for truly and proactively fostering a diverse and inclusive environment impacting libraries. In January of 2016, the American Library Association Council adopted a resolution on replacement, and at the midwinter meeting in 2016, the Cataloging and Metadata Management Group's Subject Analysis Committee voted to create a working group to review the Library of Congress's subject heading, Illegal Aliens, and report to the committee with a recommendation to change the heading, keep the heading, or establish a relationship with another heading. Then by March 2016, the Library of Congress announced a resolution for discontinuing to use illegal alien as a subject heading. In June of 2016, the United States House of Representatives voted to order the Library of Congress to continue using the I word to duplicate the language of federal laws written by Congress. In July of 2016, a report was made from the Association of Library Collections and Technical Services Subject Analysis Committee Working Group on the Library of Congress subject heading for illegal aliens, making recommendations for changes. The Library of Congress posted a survey and accepted comments from the public on the proposed changes. In June of 2017 to present, a decision by the Library of Congress has now been made. In addition to these events, the Stopping Partisan Policy at the Library of Congress Act directed the Library of Congress to retain the headings aliens and illegal aliens, as well as related headings. Its sponsor, Representative Diane Black, cited the subject heading revision as needless policy change that would ultimately cost taxpayers money in a statement on her website. Then a couple of senators from Texas and Alabama sent a 2-page letter to the acting librarian of Congress criticizing the Library of Congress's misguided decision and urging it to revoke the changes. When I did my research, I found that what was most fascinating about these events is how college students at Dartmouth College worked together with their librarians to bring about much needed change at the national level. Regardless of the outcome, libraries from all over had much to say about these events, and the situation was so unique in that you had government officials interfering with how the Library of Congress operates and makes changes. So why not illegal aliens? A common objection to the term illegal aliens is that the use of the I word denies due process. It inappropriately declares the outcome, making a judgment when the subject has not actually been adjudicated in court. Illegal alien is a dehumanizing, inaccurate, offensive, and inflammatory term. So now that I've given you some background information, I wanted to ask you to please answer the following question in the chat section. So what are other subject headings that could be made more inclusive?
And it looks like we're kind of getting a mix of answers. So it looks like we're getting some recommendations for maybe how it could be made, how illegal aliens could be made to be better. Sorry, that's not really what I wanted to say, but the words escape me. But then also we're getting some people giving us other subject headings such as Indians of North America, etc., that might also do well to be changed in the future. For instance, other options for Latino, Latina instead of Hispanic Americans. Homeless, transient, anything having to do with LGBTQ. Yeah, anything having to do with mental illness, gender identities. Yeah, these are all great. So it looks like we all have a lot of work ahead of us, huh?
Thank you for answering that question. We will be discussing other alternative subject headings later in the presentation.
All right. Thanks, guys. That's great.
So moving on, after I did my background research, I was also looking at ways to support an initiative like the one implemented. So I looked at the Association of College and Research Libraries diversity standards. There are a total of 11 diversity standards, and I felt that these three encompass and strongly support a project such as this one. The standards were developed by the Association of College and Research Libraries Racial and Ethnic Diversity Committee, emphasizing the need and obligation for academic and research libraries to serve and advocate for racial and ethnically diverse constituencies. So Standard 1, Cultural Awareness of Self and Others, says that librarians and library staff shall develop an understanding of their own personal and cultural values and beliefs as a first step in appreciating the importance of multicultural identities in the lives of the people they work with and serve. Standard 6 says, librarians and library staff shall support the preservation and promotion of linguistic diversity and work to foster a climate of inclusion aimed at eliminating discrimination and oppression based on linguistic or other diversities. And Standard 9, cross-cultural leadership, says library leaders shall influence, support, and encourage the creation of proactive processes that increase diversity skills, empower colleagues, coworkers, and constituents from diverse backgrounds, share information about diverse populations, and advocate for their concerns. Pertaining to our implementation project at CU Boulder, I also looked at the library's strategic plan. Student success goal number 4 states that the libraries will augment partnerships and initiatives that foster students' engagement, belonging, and participation within campus communities. Student success goal number 7D states that the libraries will develop or redesign existing library spaces to foster academic success, to provide an inclusive atmosphere, and to connect users to library services and resources through web presence that enhances discovery, access, and usability. It was very important to look at these goals, and it was very satisfying to be able to tie them when the proposal was submitted for approval. At the time I looked at how many undocumented students were in our campus, I learned that there were approximately 70, which is a large number. My colleague Laura actually found that the number is quite higher now, and she'll talk more about that shortly. Next, I have found additional sources for support from conference reports. Reports from the Association of Library Collections and Technical Services and the Cataloging and Metadata Management section and the Subject Analysis Committee at the last ALA Midwinter meeting in 2018, precisely on this topic, stated the following. A possible alternative way forward is for cataloging agencies to apply non-Library of Congress subject heading terminology to works about undocumented immigrants and similar concepts. Such terminology could be sanctioned by PCC or the Program for Cooperative Cataloging, the Subject Analysis Committee, or another body. And I would love to see this happen sometime soon. This slide shows the academic resources that already use undocumented immigrants. So there's a couple in there. And you can see that it is government resources that still use the offensive term. This slide has the description of my proposal at CU Boulder Libraries. My proposal asked for the ability to enhance and help with discovery and access to our collections on the topic of immigration. The enhancement would add access by allowing the alternative subject headings to be searchable as keywords. And I have an example of this later. This slide has a list of all the alternative subject headings that were inserted in our bibliographic records. So there's a total of 7. These are the 2 institutions where the project has been implemented, along with dates of implementation. So Regis University and CU Boulder Libraries. While at Regis University as a cataloging librarian, I used Create List to identify all bibliographic records with the offensive Library of Congress subject term. I ran separate lists for each of the 7 terms. I then used global updates to delete the offensive terms and replace them with the alternative ones. I had edited about 500 records this way. Because I had stripped the offensive terms altogether and replaced them, I was able to keep the subdivisions. In this example, the subdivisions are Colorado, Denver, in the same subject string. Once a month, I ran the saved queries to make sure I kept up with the intended changes, a process that was very fast and easy. At CU Boulder, the project was implemented differently. Because our libraries are members of the PCC program, or the Program for Cooperative Cataloging, as participants, we contribute bibliographic records to international databases. We did not eliminate the offensive subject headings. Instead, we kept them as is, but added the alternative subject headings as keywords, as shown in the example. The added keywords provide discoverability to each of the records, and the total number of records changed are approximately 5,500 records. This slide has the public view of our online catalog at CU. Because the subject heading non-citizens is only a C reference under the authorized illegal aliens authority record, when searched for it as a subject term, the catalog instructs users to search using aliens. And this is very problematic. On the bottom half of the slide, you can see how our project allows users to search for non-citizens as a keyword search, with over 3,000 results. This slide has the before and after results, so to speak. Seeing the results in this way from the public view is extremely satisfying to a cataloger, I will say. So how did we do this and why? In summary, changes were done in batches using Create Lists and global updates in our ILS, which is Sierra. We run Create Lists once a month to make sure changes stay consistent and that any new record entered in the system containing any of the offensive terms gets batch edited or enhanced. So now we'll switch gears slightly and talk about the administrative decision-making background information, which Laura will enlighten you with.
Thank you, Sol. But before I start, I'd love it if you would take a moment to let us know if you would consider implementing changes like this. So either replacing or enhancing your records. This is looking, it's nice to see that this isn't a 50-50 split, though I guess that's not surprising. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, that's the first thing I want to talk about because I was very much an I don't know. Before Sol joined our department, which was just a couple of years ago, I had thought a lot about this issue, but I was still really considering it from a detached theoretical perspective. And I think it's important to talk about how Sol changed my mind about appropriate responses to and actions on this issue of subject headings not being updated by the Library of Congress. I had been thinking this change really needed to happen at the national level, that is, in the Library of Congress subject authorities. And I'm realizing, sorry, I need to change my slide. So I really thought this needed to happen in the Library of Congress subject authorities, and I still think that that's where this needs to happen. But Sol's outline of the issue, when she first proposed doing something like this, made me realize that I'd been waiting for change to come from above. And now I really think that the change needs to start with us, individual libraries, and move up. What really got to me was the number Sol mentioned earlier, 70. This was the number at the time she made her proposal. According to the latest reports from our university, we currently have close to 100 DACA students at the University of Colorado Boulder. I imagined each one of those students not feeling welcomed. That still chokes me up. I imagine these students not feeling welcomed by our catalog, and it makes me want to cry. And that is what changed my mind. And I had really been focusing on the technical aspects of this problem, and I'm eternally grateful to Sol for helping me see this issue from a human perspective. Because after all, what's the use of being technically proficient if we don't serve our real users' basic needs? And those needs include feeling safe and being included in the intellectual discourse of their education. So I'm going to talk about the logistics, but before I do that, and especially because it sounds like about half of the people attending today have made changes like this in their catalogs, I'd like to know what challenges that you foresee in making changes like this. Okay, so we've got someone's the only cataloger and wonders if you would have time. Yes, and that is a big concern. No time, no technology, yep. Your administration doesn't want you to, yep. Keeping up on it, yes. Union catalogs. Oh, I love that Tesla Model T analogy, keeping records PCC, not being able to decide on appropriate other terms, yes. Gatekeeping higher ups. Okay. Oh, getting colleagues to agree, yes. Loss of accuracy in the terms that are changed. Maintenance, okay. So these are a lot of the concerns that I had also. And once I decided that we really did, despite these concerns, need to actively address this, I rethought the technical and logistical issues. Our database is large. We have over 7 million bibliographic records currently. We have records from a number of different sources, including many that are batch loaded and routinely batch updated. So we can't make local changes and count on them not being overwritten. Furthermore, as Sol mentioned, we are a PCC library. We participate in BibCo, CONSER, and NACO, and we have to create records that meet the community standards. So we can't throw out those LCSH terms, no matter how objectionable we may find these alternative terms. So in the next few slides, I'll address these questions, which were the questions I asked myself in trying to decide how I was going to recommend we go forward with this. And I'll talk through each of these and their implications. So I chose this image because there's a tension between maintaining cooperative shared standards and addressing local needs. Both are important. The arguments in favor of keeping the LCSH terms include keeping in sync with the cooperative cataloging environment, the ability to programmatically change these once they are officially changed, because I'm being optimistic that we will get these terms changed, and maintaining access for those who might know and use established terminology. Additional considerations need to be given to indexing. So in our system at CU Boulder, our local subjects, anything that's not LCSH, are indexed as keywords only. So there's no hyperlinked browse option in our online catalog for anything that is not an established subject. Reindexing is costly and would have other broad implications as well. So this was one of the additional reasons that we kept the official terms rather than replacing them entirely. Another option that I would consider if you maintain a local authority file would be to change your local records so that a search, for example, for illegal aliens would instead result in a C reference to undocumented immigrants. We did not consider this solution because we outsource our authority control, so once again, any changes we made, we couldn't count on them not being overwritten. And finally, there's another possibility, depending on your discovery tools, to keep the LCSH terms in your record, but have them display differently to users. And Christina Spurgeon at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is experimenting with this. I have hope that in the future, linked data will facilitate more customizable displays, perhaps even to the point where users could choose a different sort of skin when they first enter our discovery tools that would display concepts in terms they are more familiar and comfortable with. So whatever option you choose, if you're going to make systematic changes like this to your catalog, you need to come up with efficient ways to identify records that need changing and to make those changes. So are your records updated routinely, or would you only need new records to be changed? Can you make changes at the point of cataloging or at the point of loading, or do you need to make them afterward? So the flexibility and or limitations of the tools available to you may dictate your approach to a project or process like this. And then we have ongoing maintenance. So once again, it's important to consider the tools and resources that you have. You want to figure out who is going to be responsible for maintaining changes like this. How often can it be done realistically? We're doing this once a month currently. Where is it documented? You want to make sure you document this. And can it be automated? This part's really important to me. This is something we are looking at, and I really think that automation is the only way we could feasibly expand on efforts like this. And we've approached this as a pilot project with our library's IT, and I'm excited to see where we might go with this. But really, we've only just begun. I would like, among other things, I would like to analyze our search logs and see how are our users searching for materials with terms like these. Have we provided better access by providing more terminology in our records? And have our users' searching strategies changed at all because of this? I'd like to get feedback from our users, both from our library staff and from patrons. And I would like to continue to advocate for change at a higher level, and I hope that if more libraries are willing to make these changes at the local level, that will help initiate change. And then there are obviously, as people noted earlier, there are a lot of other areas we could apply similar strategies if we were able to, say, automate this or have a more collective approach. So subject headings, one people mentioned a lot. Indians of North America, that is a great one. That really affects access, in addition to being just fundamentally problematic. Hispanic versus Latino, Latina, Latinx, mentally ill, women in, Oriental. These are all problematic. Another one that somebody brought to my attention recently was problem children. And also many indigenous names, both for places and people, have a lot of issues. And then there are the related issues such as misassignment of subjects and then the subsequent acceptance of misassigned subjects via cooperative cataloging workflows. a great and somewhat troubling example of this came to our attention recently from our music librarian. She forwarded an email message to us, and I'll just excerpt from it, that it recently came to my attention. There are fairly widespread cataloging errors when it comes to the Singing Teacher's Guide to Transgender Voices, a landmark new book on vocal technique for transgender students. So the master record in OCLC, which was held by a number of libraries, including the Library of Congress, cataloged the book under an RF call number. So that's, for those of you who don't use Library of Congress, that's medical, the medicine section. It's the LSE subclass for otorhinolaryngology, which is the study of diseases of the ear, nose, and throat. And the subject fields it was given in the record was voice disorders treatment, communicative disorders treatment, and voice culture complications. This librarian wanted to say this is a book of vocal pedagogy, not a tome dealing with diseases of the ear, nose, and throat. And our music librarian specifically mentioned she knows there's at least one transgender student in the music department, and she was frankly mortified at how this would make somebody approaching our catalog feel. I'm proud to say the record has subsequently been updated in OCLC. It was updated within 24 hours of this email making the rounds. In our catalog, at least, it is now classed in the MTs, so it fits in the music collection. And the subject headings assigned are singing, instruction and study, school music, instruction and study, and transgender students. While I was considering this issue, I looked at some other subjects related to transgender people and realized that currently they are segregated, just like somebody earlier pointed out, women, with terms such as transgender artists and transgender athletes, which to me says we're implying that a transgender athlete is not an athlete. If I just look for athletes, I'm not going to find transgender athletes, women athletes, who knows what other athletes are going to be omitted. So we still have a long way to go in combating the biases of our culture and their influence on how we describe library resources. My big question for myself currently is, how do we balance being efficient and giving sufficient attention to individual materials? And I don't have the answer to this question, and I also don't have the answers to the question, how much attention should we give to making local changes versus advocating for change at the national level? And I included this silly image, and it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. I hope it's apparent that I think these issues should be taken very seriously. One of many criticisms I have read of using the term aliens is that some people think of little green men. As I said, the image is tongue-in-cheek, but the issue is very serious, and how we describe materials impacts how and whether our users can find and use them. So at this point, unless there are pressing questions related to anything I just mentioned, which I'm not seeing, I'm going to hand it back to Sol to conclude.
Thank you, Laura. So to share a concluding inspirational quote, do work that matters, vale la pena, or it's worth it, by Gloria y Anzaldúa, a poet, writer, and scholar. The quote applies so well to this initiative. And lastly, I know that there are many libraries and librarians who deeply care about oppression and social justice issues. For me, it is encouraging and so refreshing to see colleagues respond so positively to this and other initiatives that specifically foster diversity and inclusion to the users that we serve. I want to thank you to all who have shown your support. We are in fact a service profession, and our collective efforts are for good causes and they don't go unnoticed. So here's a list of our references. And I want to say thank you for attending our webinar. I want to thank Christina for working with us to present today with the Colorado State Library. And I've also included our contact information for comments or questions regarding the presentation.
So before we wrap up today, I thought we might just do one final activity because we have a little bit of time. In the chat area, I'm just curious for those of you who are attending, who at your organization you might share this idea with, and what's one thing that you think you can do to move this idea forward at your library. So if you have just another moment to stay with us, I'd love to see some of your answers to this. Additionally, if you have any questions for the presenters, like I said, we still have 20 minutes left, so I'm sure we have plenty of time for Q&A before everybody has to log off. So Louisa is talking about giving examples of other libraries doing initiatives like this. So that's a great way of sharing information. And somebody had messaged me during the presentation, I'll make the slides available. The entire archive or recording of today's session will be available, and it will look pretty much identical to this. So you'll have access to the polls. So if you want to show people how a lot of people are curious about this and wanting to do this, you're wanting to show the numbers. And I'm going to take some of the chat stuff that you all shared. I'm going to strip out people's names, but just leave sort of the answers in the chat, and I'll update that as well.
I do see a couple people are wondering how we coded the alternative terms, and we made them be local, so they were 650 second indicator 7 with a subfield 2 local. And one of the reasons, as I mentioned before, we didn't get rid of the LCSH was that we don't index as subjects anything that's not LCSH. When Sol was at Regis, the local subjects were also in the subject index, so she had a lot more flexibility. That's one advantage I can see to being at a smaller organization. And I also wanted to comment, I'm not seeing it, we'd have to scroll up. Somebody is from the Decolonizing Description
Description Project, University of Alberta.
I would love to hear more about that, so I will look you up. That is fantastic that there is a Decolonizing Description Project. Oh, and reminding people it's important to approach our work from the human perspective. Thank you. That was what I needed reminding on.
Aurelia was asking if there's been any communication with other vendors about this.
Oh. Not that I'm aware of. We've really approached it just from the local end of what we're doing to our metadata, so that's an interesting idea.
I remember actually reading an article about somebody had, I guess, asked OCLC to see if they could insert the alternative subject headings in their FAST subject headings. So I know that there is an article from OCLC on that topic.
And somebody has just put that in chat also, right before you said it, that FAST would be an option. And yes, government documents are riddled with these terms.
So we have a lot of people sharing kind of who they would share with and what kind of information they would share. Let's see, there was from Calgary Public Library, have you guys done any community consultation on which terms you used as replacement terms?
Oh. We did not. We took the terms that had been proposed that Library of Congress had intended to adopt. Mm-hmm. If there hadn't already been a proposal and the Library of Congress hadn't been ready to adopt the terms, I think that would have been a really good thing to do. And it probably still would be a good thing to do. Somebody also is asking why not a 690. That was just a local practice. We most of our load profiles actually strip out 690s. Mm-hmm. So a 690 would be a perfectly acceptable place to put something like this. We just had at some point in our institution in the past made the decision not to use 690s.
So if you guys have any more questions, continue to enter them in chat. I'm also going to put a link to a survey for today's session. We'd love to have your feedback. The link, you should just be able to click on it and open up the survey. So we'd love to hear what you thought about today's session and other sessions that you have in mind. I'm also going to put a link to our CSL in Session website, which is where you will be able to find the archive when I get it done, hopefully within the next hour, in case you want to share the session with others. And if any of you need a certificate for attending today, I'm going to type my email in the chat area as well, and you can shoot me a quick email, and I'll make sure within the next couple days that you get a certificate. So once again, keep the questions coming. It looks like Susan's asking, are you creating a controlled vocabulary that you can refer to for newer entries?
So what we have right now is we have basically a Google Doc, and that is where we are documenting how we're making these changes.
Somebody is also asking how this is impacting Prospector. Because we're pretty large, I believe we are the master record for a lot of titles in Prospector, so these terms would be going into Prospector. And honestly, I did not look and see if local subjects are in the subject index or not in Prospector. I should have done that, and I will follow up on that. Thank you so much for pointing that out.
And for those of you who are outside of Colorado, Prospector is one of the interlibrary loan programs that we offer. And somebody had written up kind of at the top that it's the Seattle Public Library. They have an internal message board that allows workers from across the system to discuss things. And a colleague has already brought up the ableist, racist overtones of the Dewey Decimal System. And it sparked some great dialogue about how to make our collection subjects more relevant. And that he thinks that he could continue to continue the conversation by discussing what has been learned at this webinar. And once again, the archive will be available, so you should be able to share the URL to the archive directly. Bean? Have we missed any questions that people typed in? I'm trying to do a quick scan because I want to make sure we got. Did we answer, did you create a local authority? That may have already been answered.
Let's see, we did not create a local authority, and that's because we outsource our authority control. Otherwise, I think that would be possibly a really efficient, effective way to take care of this.
And if anyone would like to have a copy of our presentation slides, please go ahead and email me. My email address is still displayed on the slide, and I would be happy to share that with you. I know I've gotten questions. I've gotten questions about the sources used from the reports of the committee and conferences, and you do have to be an ALA member to be able to access those reports, but hopefully many of you are.
One thing we discussed, Sol and I talked about whether we would talk about this or not, but we tried to promote this pretty broadly. We had an announcement sent out to campus that we'd done this, and we got an interesting response from a conservative/libertarian online paper that sent us a number of questions. And it was really great that before we did this, Sol had prepared a proposal, and all the questions they asked us, really, we were able to answer with that proposal. They were really, honestly, trying to trip us up, and they weren't able to because Sol had done the background research. But it surprised me how quickly they noticed this.
Yes.
And Sol, this is Christine. Do you have any objection if I put a PDF to the slides up on the website?
I do
The
not.
CSL in Session website? Okay, so I can put those up as well as the recording. Yeah, and we have a lot of people saying thanks, and they'd love to see the conversation continued. And I know they had put their contact information up. I can go back to that screen. So I would like to say thank you to everyone who attended the session. At one point in time, we had 92 people on, so this seemed to be a very popular topic. And I was thrilled that the two presenters reached out to me and asked to do a CSL in session. So thank you guys for reaching out, because it seems to be a very popular topic. Our next CSL in session is going to be on Thursday, November 8th.